Hi, friends. In our time together today, we're diving into a question that rose from one of the friends in the community out of a recent conversation we had. And I think answering this question together is going to help all of us. I so appreciate the conversations where I chat about something and ask you all for input. You all provide such wonderful input. It's one of the reasons why community is so very important. You think of things I've not said. You enhance what I've said. At times you correct me. I'm grateful. I really appreciate it. Last week, we had a conversation where I talked about my process for learning a tune, and I asked you what your process for learning a tune was. And out of that, a newer friend in the community, Joseph, hey Joseph, thanks for the question. Joseph is also new in his whistle learning journey. He wanted to know how all the friends in the community go about memorizing a tune. How do you decide what you're going to memorize? Well, let me dive into some of Joseph's specifics. Now, do you pick up a tune and these are things like, do you pick up a tune, learn it, and memorize it, and finish that process before you pick up another tune? Or do you just pick up a bunch of tunes and try and learn them at the same time? Do you find yourself getting a little bit confused as you're learning tunes between one and another? Like if you've got two similar reels, for example, that you're learning and you're trying to really commit to memory, do you find yourself getting confused with them? Those are the things we really would like you to comment in the comments of this video. The real baseline question is, what process do you follow in memorizing a tune? Now, I know I have a playlist of talking about memorizing tunes. I'll stick a link to that playlist at the end of this video, but I really want us to have this conversation together. I want to know, Joseph wants to know, how do you approach memorizing a tune? I want to share first a couple of comments that speak to this, that came out of the conversation about what process do you have for learning a tune. And these comments that I'm going to share came from Michael Nunley. Michael, thank you. Michael first says that we should take advantage of realizing the way we personally learn things. I have a way I learn things more easily. I need to learn tunes that way. We all learn differently. Take advantage of your process. Michael also adds, in all things, patience. Ha! Great comment. This is patience with yourself as well as patience with the process. Things take a certain length of time and require a certain effort to accomplish. You take a certain length of time to plant something into your body and brain, and that doesn't happen overnight. So take advantage of that process. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with the process. Now, I want to add just a few comments. I know I have a whole playlist on memorizing tunes, so I just want to add a few other things that I think are pertinent to this conversation that speak more about how I memorize things and what I choose to memorize than what may or may not be applicable to everybody, though I think some of this is applicable more broadly. I think back, now you could think about this with anything you've ever memorized. I think back to music I memorized. There are some tunes I memorized or didn't even intend to memorize that I memorized over the years. And there were tunes that I know I memorized. We had this way back, high school days, marching band, for example. We had this thing we played coming onto the field, and somebody fired off a cannon. We marched through the smoke. It was pretty cool. It's mid-70s. You could use a cannon. It just shot flaming rags out. I remember the first few notes of that, and I must have played that hundreds and hundreds of times, but I don't remember all of it. Now, there are tunes I've heard that I really enjoy back at that same time that I could pick up, that I have probably never held the sheet music for, and I could pick up and I could just play today, because different things get seated in our minds differently. So I'm going to chat, as I said, about my process, but I want to add in from my experience as a professional trainer of some general things that it's important for all of us to be aware of. The first one goes back to I don't remember everything I ever memorized, and that is content has to be refreshed or it won't be fresh. We learn content. I said be patient with the process. We learn content over time, and you kind of layer it in, you blend it in, you grow, you stitch that memory together. We've talked about that in previous videos. But then over time, you have to revisit that content. I'll either sit in my study or go outside or sit in the living room, and I'll have my memory prompts for a number of tunes, maybe randomly selected or specifically selected because I'm having a hard time remembering them, and I'll play them 2 or 3 times each, and just play them through, and then that's that. That helps refresh those tunes in my brain. Now, I believe that a measure of intentionality is important in memorizing something, but I also believe that memory is crafted more organically through layering content together. What I mean by that is, I recently introduced Fisher's hornpipe. And I haven't set out to memorize that, but I'm practicing the tune. I didn't throw any ornaments in there, and I didn't play it up the pace, and that's okay. But organically, I'm working on learning to play the tune as I practice the tune, as I experiment with the ornaments, as I try and get up to pace with playing the tune. I found that I've memorized the tune. It just happened over time. Remember one of the things I've said before, and this you'll hear a number of folks say this. Take a tune you're working on, pull it out, whatever memory prompt you're using, sheet music, tabs, ABCs, or just somebody else playing it, whatever it is, and spend 10, 15 minutes on that tune. Set it aside. Go do something else. After a while, go cut the grass or something. Go to work. Come back. And then spend another 10 or 15 minutes on it. Do that a couple, 3 times a day. And over a period of time, organically, you will plant that tune in your brain and you will memorize it. Now, yes, you hear the intentionality there, though. I'm going to visit that tune that I'm learning now 2 to 3 times a day, and I'm going to spend about 10 minutes a time on that tune, or 15, experimenting with different things, working on the pace, working on the core of the tune. And I think that's important for us to realize that as you're working on a tune, it will start to stick. And I will find myself, though, like if I'm playing a tune that I already know, and some tunes I've played enough, like Return from Fingal was one of the first tunes I learned. I could probably play that one in my sleep. It's short, it's memorable, but there are other tunes that I find that I stumble in places. I was playing, let's see, this is, that is, I'm forgetting the name. There you go. There's memory. Oh well, I should know what it is. If if it crops up in my brain, otherwise, one of you could shout that out in the comments. Jonathan and I have played that. I learned it from him, and I find that somewhere in the middle of that tune, I get lost. I don't know why. I just do. And so what I do is, that's a tune that, because I have trouble with that one tune in the middle, I will revisit that whole tune a couple times a week, because I'm still seating it in my brain. I've known that tune for a good while. I'm still dependent upon my memory prompt. And I'm trying to break free of needing my memory prompt. So anyway, now one of the other things that that Joseph asked was, do you learn a lot of tunes at once? Or do you just like stick with one tune until you've nailed it? I personally do not stick with one tune until I've nailed it. Although I don't choose to try and learn 10 tunes at one time. What I'll do is, you all ask for tunes to be learned, and I go through and I'm like, oh, I could play that one. And I learn the tune, and as I'm learning the tune, I transcribe it, I introduce it to you all, and as I'm going through that process, I don't begin learning another tune. I will begin learning one tune at a time. However, I'm probably sitting down playing half a dozen other tunes, I don't know. At the same time, I'm refreshing my memory on a dozen tunes I do know. At the same time, I'm just messing around. I'm running my scales, I'm running other practices. But over the period of a few days, I'm working on focusing intentionally on learning a tune. And as I learn that tune, it begins to seat in my memory. And then it becomes one of the tunes that I revisit over time. So I don't try and memorize like 5, 6, 10 tunes at once. But I also don't only focus on that one tune that I'm learning to the exclusion of others. Again, this is where, coming back to Michael's comments, it's important for you to say what works for you. What works for you, generally memorizing things. And I think that is really helpful. Well, I'm back. You may not even have known I was gone. Well, you probably did, because there's a little, transition in the video. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I looked up the tune. Leaving Youest. Oh, see, I don't even remember the name. Anyway, Joseph was asking about that. Do you just cram a tune? I'm not a fan of cramming content into my brain, because the trainer in me says cramming content doesn't create long-term memory. There are studies on this. I've got charts. I've got all that stuff, and I'm not going to bore you with that. But cramming does not create long-term memory. You expose yourself to the content, you engage with it, you revisit it over, like there were periods where you'd start to forget something. You need to regularly revisit it at those forgetting points. And so that's why I say when you're first learning a tune, take a few days, 2 to 3 times a day, 10 to 15 minutes, work on that tune. Do that for the week. And then you could be working on other stuff at the same time. But don't, if you cram something and then you walk away from it in 2 to 3 days, in a week, you're not going to remember that. For most people. So that's why I say it's important for us to respect the process, as Michael said, and be patient and take the time it takes to layer that music into our brain. So I'm not a huge fan of cramming, which is another reason why I won't work on just one tune to the exclusion of everything else. Now, sure, I start learning one tune at a time, primarily when I'm sharing it with you guys, but I'll sit around and play around with a number of other tunes just to see what strikes my fancy. Now, another point here, I don't expect myself to commit every tune to memory. This goes back to my not remembering everything musically, linguistically from language studies, or mathematically from math studies that I've all loved, all of that. I don't remember all that stuff. I remember primarily the things I have repeated over time. And so there are tunes, I'm not expecting myself to memorize every tune I learn. I keep memory prompts. What's your memory prompt? And I've said about this. Is it printed sheet music? Is it tabs? Is it ABCs? Is it just, listening to someone else play it? You'll have a list of tunes. Go back to your list and refresh yourself. You chose to learn those tunes because you love them. Go back and refresh your memory. You don't want to burn out on a tune by just focusing on it so much you burn out on it, but you need the intentionality of focusing on it enough that you commit it to at least reasonable memory, and then you revisit it so that it creates longer term memory. And that's another step of the process. And when I go back to revisit tunes I've already learned, I try and do that pretty, if I've got a list of tunes, I work my list. I try to, I might come upon a tune I learned that I'm not a massive fan of. And maybe I won't work that one that day. But that's okay. So I don't expect myself to have every tune committed to memory. Now, if I'm going to go and play with other people, I'm going to have a reasonable, not perfect, but reasonable sense of what we're going to play, and I'll practice those things. And yes, Joseph, one last thing Joseph said is, do you ever find that a tune creates a conflict of phrasings in your brain? Yeah, I mean, that's a traditional classic thing, and it happens. So to counter that myself, that's one of the reasons I don't start memorizing a tune of the exact same. Like if I'm working on memorizing a reel, I'll then try. I'm rarely, now and then. I'm not often gonna stick a reel in next. I'll probably do a jig or a hornpipe or a polka or a waltz or something, a march. I don't necessarily want to stick my learning of two similar tunes so close together that they get confused in my brain. I think that's a real thing. But you could protect yourself with some intentionality around that. Anyway, those are some random thoughts from me. As a wonderful conversation, Joseph, thank you. Now, friends, remember, please, please, please comment. How do you handle these things? Do you memorize a bunch of tunes at once? If so, how? Do you memorize one tune at a time? Are you working on other stuff while you're doing that? How do you do this? We'd love to know. The answers will not just help Joseph. You see, if Joseph is asking, then many, many, many other people in our community are asking. And whether you're asking or not, this content's still going to be helpful. Anyway, I hope this is a great and helpful conversation for you, my friends. Until next time, this is Scott Shade. Happy whistling.